Hello everyone. So today I'm going to cover how to kind of get started building a blog feature. This will be a multi-part series that I'm going to be creating. So today's tutorial will be basically on just kind of getting us set up for this series. So first and foremost, I'm going to be using my existing Helix project setup solution for this. So I had created in my last series, which I'll provide in the links below, a link to that video. But in that series, I created a Helix example.local environment as well as a solution that really just contains bare minimums. Right now, it only contains a serialization project, which uses Unicorn to keep the Sitecore items in source control, which currently I'm not using source control. I'm going to eventually also move these changes into my GitHub account so that you guys can fork those changes and work in your own local environments on at any point that you'd like to. But also you'll notice that I also created an example project. So today's is really just about getting our Sitecore instance set up and getting our project set up. So we'll create some new foundation projects or modules to work with what we're trying to build here, as well as we'll look at creating a new feature project or module inside Sitecore so that we can start building out our blog. So a blog will be a feature. It's a feature module. It may contain multiple controllers, actions, models, things like that. I'll kind of demonstrate that once we start getting into the details of it all. But I'm going to also note that this video series is not just going to be about business or not just about the technical aspects of it all, but we're going to go into more of the marketing pieces of working with this blog. It's going to have some forms on it that we might want to track via XDB, track the user, track what they're doing, doing some form of specific type of marketing based off things that it provide, or indirect marketing where we, based off what types of content they view, we will alter or personalize the site or the blog based upon that. So it should be a really fun series and should show really a good opportunity to see how to do all this with Helix and get a really good functioning blog system out of it. If you're building a blog and you want to learn how to build a blog with Helix, this would be a great way to kind of see how it would be done. So let's get started. But first and foremost, after the last session of getting your project set up, there's one thing I didn't do, which is just providing icons for some of the folders. Also, there's some folders that are missing where we're going to need to put stuff. Like we're going to have renderings, we're going to have layouts for our application, we're going to have, well, system I'm going to kind of avoid today, but there might be system level features that we might have. We're also going to have a content structure, which I'm going to create a new foundation project to kind of represent this structure I'll be creating. So let's get started. So project needs an icon. So let's go ahead and click on the image there. There's another way you can access and change icons as well. You'll notice another thing is that it's controlled by Unicorn. If you look behind here, you'll see that it's showing it's already added to Unicorn. That's from the last session that we did. We're going to be adding a lot more things today, so we're going to have to make sure we alter our Unicorn configuration to make sure those items are added to source control. So for projects, typically I like following the habitat folder icons for this. Just makes it easier to note what folders these represent. So a project is a folder window. So this guy. A feature is a cube, is a feature, and a foundation is a gear. So this guy. So now we have the icons. Now we're all set to go. We can start creating folders inside here. Like for example, if we were to build the feature, we would have a template folder called blog. And we're also going to create a new foundation project or folder, and it's going to be called Multitenant. And really what multi-tenant really represents, you could call this something else. You could call this like site structure or whatever you want to give it a name. They represent kind of the folder structure that you would have for each site. So I call it multi-tenant because I'd like to use a multi-tenant architecture for this, so that you might build site.com, and then site B.com might have a completely different architecture than site A.com. So and might have a different folder structure, might have a different layout, renderings, things like that. So I'm more favorable of multi-tenancy if I can architect that on early on. So I basically just went ahead and created these folders. I'm going to get back to these in a second. Now I want to just create these rendering folders. So project, feature, foundation. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather today, so hopefully I don't sound too sick. So here again, I'm going to set the icons for these. One thing I will note about this is for feature, we're going to set a cube. So you might want to select the recent. However, I will note that it seems to be a bug in one of the, I think I'm running Sitecore 8.2.3. There seems to be a bug with it where it wants to put in this full path. This would cause problems if you selected this and said OK, because what it's going to do is it'll be fine in your local environment, but anytime this goes to anybody else's environment, if they have a different URL here, it would show error. It would not show the icon, and then this becomes even more of an issue when you go to production and you try to go to this path. It does, obviously this would not be the URL on production or the CM environment in production. It would not be the URL. It would be something like sitecore.helixexample.com would be the CM production URL. So there's two ways. You can just strip off that part and just select it that way, or you can just go back here and just say select the cubes and say OK. So just something to keep in mind for anybody working with 8.2.3. And I assume they've probably fixed that in 8.2.4 that came out a few weeks ago. So just go through here and select the icons that you'd want, just to map to the similar icons used by Habitat. So when we're creating renderings, we're going to create renderings specifically to a feature that we're building or a module that we're building, since it's a Helix is a modular architecture. So I'm going to add underneath feature something called blog. This is where I will create blog specific renderings at some point. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of this in this section. I might just keep this video kind of short on setting up some of this basic setup. So I want to create a few more things. Right now for layouts, all I'm going to do is create a project specific folder. Since layouts are really specific to a project, you may have a layout that's specific to a feature layer, but it's less likely. So I will select the project, which is a folder window. And then that's it for that. What did I call it? I called it example. So let's just create a new one called example in here. So I might get to creating the layout in this session. Some other things, very unlikely I'm going to get to these today, but I'm going to create some placeholder settings. I'll create a feature only for this. I don't know if I'll build any foundation or project layer placeholder settings. Cubes. Actually, let's create a project. I'm not sure if we'll have a project or a feature for this. And the project is the window. I always get these confused. Anyways, so placeholder settings. We could have models that are different. We could have controllers that are different. I'm not going to necessarily go into those today. We might demonstrate how you might use these in the future. Let's go into multi-tenant, and let's start defining some of the structure that we'll have for our site. So I'm going to create a new folder or a new template called, and these are basically going to be folder templates. So actually, let's create a new folder called folder. I like to kind of separate these into different structures. So we're going to create some folder here in the foundation. For those that have referred to the Helix principles, you'll notice that folders can basically exist in any layer. So foundation is definitely acceptable for a folder template. So the first one I want to do is I want to create a tenant folder. And for now, I'm just going to have it inherit from standard template. And I like to give these icons that represent what they are. So a tenant folder would contain multiple tenants. A tenant would be, so a tenant folder would be, you could create it just website, and then in a tenant folder you'd have maybe the financial website, and then you'd have the public website, etc. Websites. And inside the tenant item, it would technically be another folder which would contain potentially site folders and sites. Pretty extensive architecture. You don't have to go to that length. You could add, at any point, you could add a site to the highest level. You don't have to go through all that multi-tenancy setup. It just allows you to build more clear separation about the sites that would be built on top of Sitecore. Because I think that's a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding when you're first building Sitecore. You can have multiple sites inside Sitecore, and that's really where it becomes really powerful. And at the price that you're going to pay for a Sitecore license, you might as well have you might as well be putting everything inside of it. All right, here's I'll choose office building for a tenant folder, and then I'm going to create a new template, and this will be tenant, just a standard values standard thing there, and I'll give it an icon as well. So office building 2. And let's give these insert options. So I'll just make sure that they have standard values. So a tenant folder can insert multiple tenant folders. Like that. And it'd be nice if we could set content to also have a insert option. Unfortunately, this would not be easy to sync with Sitecore. It's one of the flaws I see with Sitecore. We could set insert options through another way. We'll get to that possibly in this tutorial. So now that we have those, let's create a site folder. Let's try to think of a good icon for this. I'm not sure what I want to make the icon. Let's go with this icon. And then underneath that, I will have another one called just site, which will represent the site itself. And standard templates is fine. Next, close. And typically for a site, I just always give it the blue folder. That's just my preference. These icons really depend on what you want to do. But it's up to you how you want to handle that. So underneath the tenant, I want to be able to select a site folder and a site. Underneath this guy, I want to be able to select the same pretty much. Site folder and a site. And the site would have home item, etc. The home item is something that we will set in the project layer. So that's pretty much it. So let's just go ahead and create a very simple structure up here. I'm going to insert from template just to get this going. I'm just going to create a template. I'll create all sites. And then underneath this, I'm going to have a tenant for general main site. And then I'm just going to have a site. I'm not going to go too far. Example.com. That's going to fail because I can't put .com in there. I'm going to change let's put in standard fields. And I'm going to specify the display name to example.com. Just so it's easy to make sense of what's going on here. So now we need to really get this stuff into source control. I've been making all this progress and it hasn't been added to source control. So the first thing is I need to create that project I created as a foundation, multi-tenant. So what I'm going to do is go to add new project. And just like I did before, I'm going to give this the name of code. And I'm going to browse and I'm going to create some of that structure. New multi-tenant. And then I need to just, give it code multi-tenant and click OK. Web application, that's correct. Yep. It's going to be an MVC empty. No unit test right now. That's another thing I'm going to cover in the future is I'm actually going to do unit tests for this and show you how to create an IOC container to work with unit tests in this setup. So now that I created that, I'm just going to rename or go to properties and give it the proper name, sitecore.foundation.multitenant. Control A, copy. And I'm going to rename it as well. That way, when I build this, it goes right into the code part. So a few other things is I'm going to make sure that these aren't moved. So none. And I'll delete the global that is. App data I don't need access to either. Start, I don't. Maybe a bunch of things I don't need. I'm going to create an app config. include a include folder. And I will create a Z foundation like the above. And then I will create a config, and I will call it Sitecore.foundation.multitenant. That's serialization. Config. That way it doesn't get confused with other settings I'm going to create. So I'm just going to copy the configuration from the other one I already defined. That way I can get started at a simpler pace. I'm going to need to create some dependencies for the multi-tenant. So you can specify dependencies. And I can say this will depend on Sitecore.foundation.serialization. Actually, it's probably just foundation.serialization. And then this one will be called foundation.multitenant. And then let's specify this as multi-tenant. Let's just keep it all as lowercase. So it's kind of weird. Is that foundation? It probably was. This is foundation.multitenant. Like that. And then what I need to do is define these includes a little differently. So multi-tenant templates. These naming conventions I need to change. That's confusing. Yeah, let's just keep it as actually just let's I only need this one, so yeah, it's a foundation. Actually, let's just cut that off. It's foundation dot multi-tenant. So basically, it's going to serialize all those items. Let's just check the serialization on this. Yeah, that should be fine. Some other things I added, these are the templates. So it's good to just kind of mark. I'm going to have layout, and I'm going to have some renderings. And also I'm going to have some placeholder settings. So let's just copy these so I don't have to type them each time. Like I said, some of these don't have all this, but I think for layout, all we had was the project. Renderings had all that, but we'll just call it renderings. Renderings. And then I believe it's, I'll go back to Sitecore. So I just want to grab this guy. So like that. Placeholder settings, I don't think we had any foundation ones. So let's go back to browser. Just click on these guys. Like that. And then let's select the layout as well. Some other things that we want to do as well here is we don't want it to actually include all its children at this layer, or we would end up with everything inside this. We would actually end up with everything here. We don't really want that. So we should actually do exclude path, or exclude children is actually what we want. And equal to true. Didn't mean to do that. That way we don't end up with things we don't want to find. So or things in the foundation serialization project that we don't want. So that's what we're doing here. We're excluding the children. I don't know why, but I can't type today. Almost done. Then we'll start configuring some of the other things here. Or not for this specific project, but the multi-tenant project, we have some additional configuration for that. So I need to give this a better name, or else it will run into a conflict with a key that's already specified. Placeholder settings, and then this one I need to, this is a layout. So I can do templates, layout, layouts, project. Should work. All right, that's it for this. So we're excluding children. Some other things we might want to do. is we might want to go to save this, and we might want to go to the multi-tenant folder that we were creating, the serialization, and we might want to also include a patch here, patch after configuration name foundation.serialization. So it's going to patch this item after the other one. So we don't care if it includes all items underneath this folder. We actually want that. So we don't need to include any exclude children's here. We may if we find that we wanted to do something like that, but we don't here. So one other thing we need to configure is, well, it looks like we already started it. Well, we actually, yeah, we already started configuring it, but we want to do actually after the multi-tenant instead. And it's going to depend on foundation multi-tenant as well. But we should define not just templates, but also content now, because we're starting to add content underneath that item. So we can say project example.content. Now you want to be careful about how you handle content, but since we're just developing, it doesn't really matter at this point. So path, Sitecore, templates, or no, it's Sitecore content, and we'll just do everything under site content for now. We could limit that further because we probably wouldn't want to, if we had another site that we were defining, we probably wouldn't want to pull that one in as well. But for now, this is fine. So, okay, so that's all defined. Let's now publish these things. I will also need to create a new publishing profile for my multi-tenant project up here. So I'm just going to create a new one. IIS file system. And this one is called Helix Example. Website. This is fine. Like I said, I'm going to cover more efficiencies and things that we can do to not absolutely have to publish everything like I'm doing right now. There's a whole concept of doing gulp and using gulp to automate some of these tasks, so you can have it publish all the projects, things like that. But for this, I'm not going to go through that. So that is done, and now if we go back here, what I want to do is go back to the unicorn.aspx page. Because even though I've defined them, nothing exists currently in the, oh wait, I just thought of something. One other thing I want to check. I want to make sure these paths are correct. So get Helix example, project example, serialization. Sounds about right. The rest should be good. We'll see. Sometimes you'll have problems with the lengths. Let's go back to, now typically you'd want to patch this. I'm not going to. There's a setting that allows you to change that. Probably specified it right here. Put in a rainbow config. So let's just change this to 120. All right, so now you'll see that it's giving us a bunch of messages. Really what we need to do is reserialize some of these projects. So I could just Actually, before I do that, I'm going to reserialize the foundation.serialization. Then I will reserialize this, or actually initial serialize. And then I will reserialize project example. And voila. And let me just take a look at the Helix just to see how it added these things in. So serialization contains these two items. Foundation, multi-tenant, serialization templates. So contains that. Serialization contains all these. Most of these will be empty until I start adding stuff to them. So looks like it's good to go. Let's go ahead and actually just create one more project. I want to create the project called blog. This is where we'll start defining all our settings. So I'm just going to call it code. And like I said, probably in a prior session, this naming convention is just a Helix or a Habitat one. You don't necessarily have to follow that. It's easier if you want to use any of the gulp tasks that are used by Habitat to follow that same convention, because then you can just move the code over, which I'll show at a later session. But you don't have to follow that. It's all up to you on what you'd like to follow. So I'm creating a feature called blog. Select that folder, click OK, and then I'm going to create an MVC for that, empty .NET application. Again, I'm going to delete everything I don't need. And just update the properties on this to not publish it, because we wouldn't want that. And lastly, I'm just going to go ahead and, before I do that, let's do app config folder, include and I'm going to create a ZZ folder, ZZ feature, and then I will create a new config. I will call it Sitecore. Actually, I want to change the naming convention on this. Let's do feature dot. Let's keep it the same. Sitecore. Sorry. Maybe I'll eventually change that, but I shouldn't necessarily change it for this project. Feature.blog. .serialization. We could add all our configurations to one file. We wouldn't necessarily have to split up like I keep doing, but that's a personal preference as well. A lot of this is personal preference. I found that, there's a few things in Habitat that I would ask questions on the community about. I'd be like, why are they doing it like that? Well, it was more personal preference than anything else. Copy that, AV, and then I will just rename this. Just like that. Let's go into this. I'm just going to steal this again. I'll steal it from a simpler project. So I'm just going to call this feature.blog. For now, all it's going to have is that defined. Actually, let's give it one other for feature.blog.renderings database master path Sitecore layout renderings feature blog. Let's make sure I specified that correctly. One thing I'll note is now when you go on all sites, you'll see that it's being controlled by Unicorn, which is what we want to see. So I just wanted to confirm that this path was correct. All right. So now when I publish this, which I'll need to create a new custom profile for, we could also publish this to the path as well, but I would need to make sure this is open administrator mode. Visual Studio is, but so Sitecore, Helix example, website, next, save. I'll publish all those changes. Not a whole lot going on inside this project yet. We'll not that project, but this project we'll go through more detail here soon, and probably in my next session. So let's go back to here, and I did a publish, but I also need to make sure that I just deal with the Unicorn stuff again, because now this looks like we have a slight issue with how we have this configured, because it's just continually going back and forth. Oh, I know why. This is, if you ever see this is because I did not change this path. This is still pointing to obviously my wrong location. So as it serializes one, it overwrites the wrong one, and then it says the other one's not correct. So feature blog. So let me publish that. And now if I refresh, I will need to reserialize the feature blog again. But now it's showing everything is correct because it's not going in there and updating everything incorrectly. That might be complaining because I might have something mapped and it might not actually exist yet. So let's not worry about that for now. So we're pretty much done with the configuration of the environment. In the next session, I'm going to go through just start creating kind of the layout, the renderings, creating the basic pages, page type templates, etc. that we need to start running this blog. And then I think we'll get that kind of set up. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Glass for everything, but we're going to manually create all the Glass models, not using TDS or anything like that, or Unicorn to Glass or anything like that. We're just going to manually create everything. So I think we're going to be able to do testing and things like that once we get there, but with the use of Glass. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this session. As you can see, everything is here. This is also a good tutorial for anybody that's not necessarily looking to build a blog, but also looking to build anything from that first tutorial on. This is a very good tutorial for that. So let me know if you have any questions, and that's it.